Hi, and welcome to PracticeStudio X20. This is going to be a very short video just giving you an initial introduction to the X20 version. We'll also have some deeper training videos on the major new pieces of the system, but this is for everybody just to give you a lay of the land of the new version. Okay, so you see the topics there. I'm going to go ahead and jump straight into the software and we'll talk about these. Okay, so the first thing you notice, the login form looks different. It behaves the same way as it has in the past, username, password, and so on. Okay, once we're into X20, you notice it does look a bit different. Okay, the home page here looks quite a bit different. The first key takeaway for this new version, this home page, the first screen you see, is completely customizable by user. Okay, you do that by managing these shapes, which we call widgets. Okay, I'll look at that deeper here in a moment, but that's the first big piece. Second big piece we're going to look at is this application menu. Okay, it behaves much in the same way as the prior application menu, but it's rearranged. It's got a new color scheme. The icons are a little bigger than they were so that they're touch friendly on tablets. Okay, there are a couple changes we'll look at here in a moment. Okay, but mostly that's going to behave the same way once you get used to the new look. The quick launch is going to be our third item. Okay, and that has moved from the link in the bottom left. There used to be a blue link that said quick launch up to my top left, and this now behaves as an instant patient search. So I can do several things to search for patients immediately without having to deal with browse dialogues or pop-ups. Third big thing right there, the quick launch. Okay, the last thing is going to be charting. So if I pick one of these patients, you'll notice this looks a bit different. It's the new patient card. But from this card, if I pick medical records, it's going to take me not to the medical records folder. Okay, that is no longer a thing in X20. We no longer have a dedicated medical records folder. Instead, it's going to pull up the patients folder and the medical records page of that folder. And there are some good reasons for that. Okay, so those are the four key things we're going to look at real quick in this video. Just wanted to give you that lay of the land to start with. So from the home folder, we talked about these widgets. Those are these shapes. Okay, and I have customized my home folder to have my launcher widget, which are these shortcuts I've set up to get to different areas of the system without having to go through a menu. We have the patients in clinic, which is a brand new option. Shows me patients who are currently checked into my clinic using these little cards, and I can actually click on the card and have it do something that's appropriate for my role. We'll see what those options are. Okay, and then I have my time and weather widget right here, which just gives me my local weather and my local time. Pretty self-explanatory. Okay, I also have added a whole second page just for scanning. So I'm assuming I scan a lot and I don't want this cluttering up my main home folder here. So I added a whole nother page with a little star icon that's just for my scanning. Okay, you can do that for anything that's a widget. You can add anything you want to here. It can be 10 widgets. It can be just one really big sized widget if it's for my patients in clinic or my prescription management or anything along those lines. Okay, to actually customize this, I'm going to come back to my dashboard view for this. Okay, you can drag these around just by clicking on the header, holding down the mouse and dragging it. You can resize them. Let me move that back over real quick. You can resize these by clicking on the bottom right corner and resizing. All that's pretty to be expected for most Windows programs, but it lets you resize and rearrange your home folder as you see fit. And then at the very bottom left here, you can add a new widget. So if I click Add Widget, you'll see what our options are. Okay, so now the first thing here, Document Media Management. Let's talk about the areas that are brand new in X20 that we do have deeper training videos on. First is scanning and media. Okay, so scanning and media in PracticeStudio X20 has been completely rewritten from the ground up. How you manage your media, which are your pictures or your lab results or any of those kind of media items that are attached to a patient chart, that's all new in X20. And how you manage your scanning is all new in X20. You do it primarily through this new widget. Okay, there's a lot of friendly new options. You can scan in bulk. It's a great new feature. We have a video just for that. I'd certainly recommend you checking it out if that's something you do in your daily duties. Okay, the menu launcher is just this launcher shortcut area here. Okay, those will probably come across. We had something very similar in X16, looked just like this with the colored buttons. If you've customized that and have your own on X16, when you first log into X20, you'll probably have a launcher widget sitting there waiting for you. You can then customize it further if you want to. Online portal, that's the second area that's brand new in X20. That's going to be a brand new online portal. The charting has changed quite a bit. We'll look at it just real briefly here in a moment. But we do have a detailed training video on all of that I'd certainly recommend you checking out if that fits your scope. Patients in clinic, we've already mentioned. Script manager is going to be the last thing that's brand new in X20. So the prescription writer has been completely rewritten from the ground up here as well. And again, we have a video just for that goes through all the new features and functionality of that new script writer. This is just one piece of it, which is the script manager. Okay, that'll be a widget that sits on your home page if that's appropriate for you. And then last, we already talked about it with the time and weather. Let's go ahead and add a time and weather widget real quick, just to see how widgets fall on there. You can see it finds my first open space, it adds a time and weather widget for that, and it lets me customize it. Now for any of these, if I hover over them, there's little icons here in the top right. Depending on the size of your screen right now, you may or may not be able to see that well. But these icons, you have a little arrow circling back on itself that refreshes the widget with the most recent information. They will refresh themselves every couple minutes, just so you know, but if you want to force it, you can click that. The little gear in the middle lets you change the settings of the widget, okay? And then lastly, you have your little X to remove the widget from your home folder. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and configure this guy to be the time and weather for Boulder, Colorado, we'll say. So I'm gonna set it to I just typed in Boulder, CO for Boulder, Colorado. I'll set the time zone for mountain time. And we'll change the title color to be this teal, just so I can visually tell it apart. And there you go. So you see now I have a time and weather for Amarillo, Texas, and a different one for Boulder, Colorado. Okay, likewise, if I were to set the settings of my patients in clinic, there's a different list of options, which makes sense. Okay, and for this, I can determine what happens when I click on one of these cards. If I'm a front desk person, maybe I want the full patient summary to come up so I can get to their registration or their ledger or checkout or whatever's appropriate. If I'm a provider, maybe I want to launch medical records immediately so that I use this to see the patients physically here, and when I'm ready to see one of them, I can just click on their picture. It takes me straight to their folder and straight to the medical records page so I can see my quick summary of their record and dive in and start doing charting. Okay, very handy new feature that you can tweak by user. Okay, so that's going to be our home folder discussion real quick. We did mention the new dashboard page. That's the add dashboard page at the bottom there. Okay, so the application menu. We covered most of this already, but just to review real quick. It's a new look and feel. We do have a couple new items in the main menu. We have this message feed that are going to be those pop-up application messages that occur whenever you log into PracticeStudio. If you miss it the first time it popped up, it won't bug you with it the second time, but you can always get to it from this Microphone message feed area of your menu. Okay, we also have this MIPS and interoperability. That's new. That's for the stage 3 MIPS certification. Lets you export, import data according to those specifications. Other than that, most things are the same. The only exception are going to be the provider areas that were on that old medical records folder. So like I mentioned before, you could click on provider, there was a medical records folder. You'd go to that generic folder and then have to pick your patient, and then you'd go into charting. We've moved that to the patient folder now. So you go to the patient folder first and then the medical records page. So there's not that one dedicated central place for medical records. Any of the management items that were on that folder have now been added to the application menu, so you have access to them. So in this case, we have the provider area of the application menu, which now has manage encounters and visits without notes. If you used either of those things, this is where you get to them now. Once you click on those buttons, it behaves just as it did in the past. Just a new way to get to them. Under setup, we have the Bach Blueprint Wizard and the Blueprint Template Editor. Okay, again, behave the same way once you click on them, just a new way to get to them. So that's going to be our application menu. Quick Launch is that third thing that we mentioned. Okay, and again, this has been moved from the bottom left up to the top left, and it serves as a quick patient search. So if I want to look at the details for Miss Fisher's records, I can type in Florence Fisher into this and hit enter. And it's immediately going to search based on name because what I typed in looked like a name. Also notice it did a sounds like search. So I typed her name in correctly here, Florence Fisher, and so here's an exact name match. But here's a Scotty Fisher that was similar, and hey, there's a Florence Fletcher as well. So it's going to do a sounds like search on what you type in. You can type in the first part of the name, the first part of the last name, just like you've always been able to do. It'll search for it with the begins with, but even if you misspell things a bit, as long as it sounds like what you're going for, it'll try and find it for you, like most of the modern things do these days. Okay, likewise, we can start searching for things that are not just patient names. So let's look at Miss Fisher's date of birth, October 23rd. If I type in 10/23/1981, which was her date of birth, and hit enter, it's going to immediately search by date of birth. I could have put the slashes in there, made it look like a date if I wanted to, but for speed's sake, I didn't. Okay, and so I can type in that date. It recognizes that's the right number of numbers to make a date, so I'm going to search for date of birth. Very handy if you have 20 John Smiths at your office. You can say, okay, well, what's your date of birth, John? Okay, and then use that to narrow down your list quite a bit. Okay, I can also search by phone number. So let's see, 555-9665. So I can type in the phone number with or without the area code. It'll recognize that as a phone number and search off of it. Okay, I can search for address in the same way and some other items as well. Okay, so by quickly just typing what I want to search for there and hitting enter, it's going to look at what I typed in, try to make its best guess as to what I'm trying to go for there, and search for that immediately. Okay, the question mark here on the right kind of gives you the logic of how that quick launch works. So it tells you, okay, if I type in any code and hit enter, it's going to search for patient code. It gives you some examples there. If I type in some words like this, it's going to search for names and so on. So you can see we can search for code, name, phone number like we talked about, date of birth like we talked about. You can also search on social security number, the physical address, and the email address in the same way. Okay, the last thing it shows you at the very top here is if you type in control enter, so if you type something in and hit control enter, it'll search for inactive patients as well. So in the rare case you need to find an inactive patient, that's how you do that very quickly. Okay, so that's going to be our quick launch. Once we do pick a patient, what you'll see is this new patient card. This gives you some summary information about the patient, the goal being that if it's simple, if you're on the phone with them, you can get some basic information about the patient without having to go anywhere else. Okay, that's going to be over to our right here. So if I click on appointments, we can see past and future appointments for the patient. If I have prescription information, I can look at that under RX encounters. If I have billing information, I can look for their balances right there, and so on. Any messages that are internal or portal messages will show up under messaging. It gives me a quick summary, and then to the bottom left of that, these links behave much like the links on the old quick launch used to do. So I can go to their registration, I can check this patient out, I can go straight to their media or their ledger using these links, or I can go straight to the medical records folder for this patient. You can see I've stacked up several patient folders for Florence so far. Let's close a couple of those. Okay, so now let's slow down and look at this medical records folder. Okay, so we've looked at the home folder, the application menu, and the quick launch. Now I've gone to, by choosing my patient here and clicking medical records, that takes me to the medical records folder of this patient's chart. Okay, remember, I can also get here just by clicking on the card on my patients in clinic widget. That makes it very quick if I'm a provider. Okay, but in this case, no matter how I got here, I'm on the medical records folder. From here, if I just want to jump in and start doing a new chart, I'll pick my home base the first time I see it. That's what this little green plus right there will do. Any of these icons, by the way, on these shapes, if you hover your mouse over them, it'll slide out and show you the label there. So you don't have to just know what that icon means. You can learn it as you're learning the system. Okay, so if I click my plus, it's immediately going to show me my available blueprints. I can pick a blueprint if I care to. I don't have to. I can do more than one blueprint if that makes sense. Okay, and then click OK. It's going to jump into a new encounter for Miss Fisher and start documenting. Okay, now the key thing to notice here, a couple things. First, the charting itself is the same as it was in X16. Same screens are available, the same blueprints are available, behaves just like it did in X16 once you get into the chart. So there's not a new learning curve there. However, the chart itself is now within the patient's folder. Notice that on earlier versions, it would have been a pop-up. And while that pop-up was there, you couldn't interact with anything else in the system. You had to close out of that chart, save it, or quit it out before you could go to the appointment scheduler or anywhere else. Now, this is available under the patient's folder. I can come up and pull a different patient if I want to. Okay, I can go to his medical record and look at something. I can even, from Miss Fisher here, I'm back at my chart, notice, I can come back to the main medical records page, look at a different encounter or edit a different encounter. It does not lock me out of anything in the system while I'm actively charting. Okay, from a usability perspective, that's a big step forward coming up to X20. Again, behaves the same way once you're in there, but it doesn't lock you into that charting window. Okay, let's go ahead and close out of that encounter. Come back to the summary page. The last thing we'll talk about here is this summary page itself is again customizable, just like that home folder was. So the goal here is I can customize this to have the summary information I care to see about the patient immediately without having to go anywhere else, without having to pull up any other encounters. It can be one click away from that Patients in Clinic widget to get straight here and see. In this case, I've set it up to be my past 3 or 4 chief complaints. I can do past treatments. I can do past exams. You can use this gear to the top right here to customize what shapes are available on this medical records page and what information is inside of those shapes. So I can get down to data type, heading, and subheading if you're familiar with those. Essentially, any piece of data in the chart, and give me a summary of it right here before I go into the note so that I can see all that before I start documenting for the patient, okay? Again, if you're a provider, we have a whole video that goes deep into some of that training, certainly worth checking out. Also those other areas, media management, scanning, and prescription writing, we have other videos that go deeper into that, certainly worth checking out. Beyond that, please do reach out to us if you have any questions on the new X20 version. That little guy right there will take you out to our support website to put in a ticket. Just let us know. We're happy to dial in with you and talk through those things. Hope you enjoy the new version and have a wonderful day.